Hi, I'm Dr. D. Leitner. Thanks for joining me for today's short series lecture. Today we're going to focus on the glue between leadership and followership, the strategic process. Um, this event is streaming on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook channels, so feel free to check it out on whichever platform is most convenient and or works best for you. So let's dive in. Have you ever wondered why some small businesses successfully scale while others sort of plateau? Or why some teams work together really well and others seem discombobulated and disjointed? The difference often lies not in the quality of their product, focus, or service, but in how well they align their strategic vision with daily operations. Today, we're going to explore a powerful framework that combines several approaches to strategy, mixing ideas from Simon Sinek and from Richard Rummelt to help create that alignment. And I'm going to show you how different frameworks interlock to create a three-stage iterative process that'll transform how you think about and execute strategy in your teams and in your growing business. And at the end, I'm going to take a quick shallow dive and bring a Jewish framework that was set at least 500 years ago, if not more, that also engages this three-stage process. But before we bring that older Jewish angle, let's focus on the here and now. The first stage in this three-stage process is strategic thinking. So, as Simon Sinek would say, let's start with the why. This stage in the process is what Rummelt calls the diagnosis phase. It's where you need to be brutally honest about your current situation. What's the problem that you are really trying to solve? What opportunities are you truly pursuing? And why are you doing what you're doing? Now, Sinek takes this deep. Like, if we think about companies like Patagonia, their why isn't just to sell outdoor clothing, it's to save our planet. And this clarity of purpose shapes everything that they do. For your business, maybe your why is to, revolutionize how small businesses handle their accounting, or make healthy food accessible to every family in your community. Or your team might be focused on creating UX, or you're part of a multi-dimension team that's focused on a specific project or program. If you're leading this process, then your diagnosis needs to answer several questions. Why is what you're doing so significant? Like, what change are you trying to make? What's holding the team back? What's limiting your business from scaling? And what unique value does your team need to bring, or your organization bring, that others can't? Now, if you can't articulate this in a clear sentence, you really haven't dug deep enough. And if you're a follower and you want to align with that vision, then you need to make clear when that vision is not clear. And you have to be willing to actively pursue that vision when it is. If leadership and followership are aligned as to the strategic diagnosis, then stage 2, strategic development, acts as the bridge that lets everyone know how leadership wants followership to engage. Now, this is where Simon Sinek's how meets Rummelt's guiding policy. This stage is about creating the bridge between big vision and concrete action. And that's going awkward again. And where was I? Oh yeah, vision and concrete action. But it's not about like detailed plans. It's about establishing the principles that will guide decision making and set objectives. Think of it sort of like guardrails for your team or your business. What approaches will you embrace? And I would say equally important, what will you deliberately choose not to do? So like, what resources are you willing to use, and what values are going to put limits on what you are willing to do with those resources? So, for instance, if your why is about making healthy food accessible, your guiding policy might be, never compromise on ingredient quality, while when you focus on your operations, it's going to be operational efficiency in order to really keep prices at a level that people can afford. What this does is it creates the effect-based objectives that tell us how we're going to change reality. What are the major steps, and what will they do? the impact that we want them to have as we move forward. And this is where many teams and small businesses stumble. It's where leaders and followers don't align. They will jump from big picture and big vision straight into some kind of tactical action without creating these guiding principles. And the result, it's scattered goals and disoriented efforts that don't build towards larger objectives. So now we arrive at the what, Rummelt's coherent actions. This is where strategy becomes reality through specific coordinated activities. Now, the key words there were coherent and coordinated. Each action should reinforce the others, creating a multiplier effect. So let's break that down a little bit. It'll include things like clear metrics, what specific numbers will tell you when you're succeeding, and how you allocate resources and what actions you will take, how as you invest your time, money, your people, and their energy towards specific things. And how are you going to create system alignment where, you ensure that every team member understands their role in the bigger picture. And the magic happens when these actions work together. So, for example, if you're scaling a service business, your coherent actions might be something like standardizing your core processes or implementing a clear feedback system and feedback loop for your customers or for your team, creating a training program or onboarding program for new team members or new organization members, developing clear handoff protocols between the different departments. And each of these is supposed to support and amplify the other. And the power of this three-stage approach lies in its connectivity and its capacity for iteration. You can always go back to your why, which informs your guiding policy, which in turn determines what you do and your specific actions. And when these stages align, scaling becomes much more natural because everyone in your organization understands not just what they're doing, but why they're doing it. And it lets everyone know lets everyone know how they're integral to that process. Now, what's really cool for me about using this system and discussing how to engage it to set strategy is that it was originally written about 500 years ago by the Ramak, Rabbi Moshe Cordovero, who was probably working on some commentaries by Azriel of Gerona and the Ravad, Rabbi Abraham ben David, and the Ramban, Rabbi Moshe ben Nachman, who describes a three-stage process, basically a three-stage creation process framework, pulling from these 1,000-year-old ideas. And the Ramak defined the first stage as the intellectual stage, which he called the muskal. This process, this stage, it had three fundamental aspects to it, three elements of creation. Wisdom, the ability to gather information, intellect, the ability to divide that information up and understand it, and then ideation, where you could take it and create some vision with it, some idea of what it's going to look like. And the next stage was then the emotive stage, which he defined as the Mulgash stage, which focused on the capacity to use energy and put limits on how energy and giving was going to be used, and what it looks like when everything's in balance. What is going to change how things are going to look afterwards. And lastly, he argued for the imprinting stage, which he called the mutba, where there was command and control elements and risk and opportunity and faith and belief and foundational acts that would engage with some end receiver of the process, be it a stakeholder or a client. And all these perspectives on strategy as process hold one thing absolutely clear. It's that strategy isn't some document that lives on a shelf. It's a living process that should inform every significant decision in your team or in your business. And by following these three stages, strategic thinking, strategic development, and implementation, you create a framework and a process that can grow and evolve the team and the business. And if you think of it as a clear line of sight from your highest aspirations to your daily operations, then this process, when it's followed and shared in depth, it acts as the glue between leaders and followers. This alignment opens the door for what I like to call strategic followership, where team members aren't just following orders, but they're actively engaged in pursuing the shared vision. They understand the boundaries within which they're working, and they, remember and analyze and express your why and develop clear guiding policies. So if you want to imprint change on your work through coherent action, then when these three align, you can create unstoppable momentum in your scaling journey. So I'd like you to riddle me this. How are you going to bring this strategic process to life in your team or in your organization? Thanks for watching. Please like, share, follow, or subscribe based on the platform that you're watching on. And don't forget to ring the bell to to get updates about future videos and live events. Thank you very much. See you next time.